In the heart of a sprawling countryside dotted with golden fields, the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the land. Cooper Hayes was wrapping up his day, covered in dirt and sweat, a far cry from the hardened mercenary he once was. To the villagers, he was just another farmer, tilling the ground and harvesting crops. But beneath that tattered flannel shirt beat the heart of a soldier, one who had seen things most could only dream of in nightmares. As evening settled, a distant sound broke the peaceful hum of the countryside. The unmistakable rumble of motorcycles echoed through the valley. The Grey Wolves, a notorious gang known for their ruthlessness, were roaming the area, their presence a storm cloud threatening to rain chaos and fear. The locals watched from their porches, worry etched on their faces. The Grey Wolves weren't just trouble, they were a plague. This time, however, they had chosen the wrong farm. On that fateful evening, the gang's enforcers rolled into Cooper's world, eyes scanning the land for any sign of vulnerability. They thought they would find an easy target, a man whose only skills involved plowing fields and herding cattle. They were wrong. Oh, how wrong they would be. As the gang dismounted, their laughter cut through the quiet, a predatory sound that echoed against the vastness of the fields. They swaggered toward Cooper, confidence radiating like the light of the setting sun. Their leathers glistened, emblazoned with jagged logos that meant trouble. Cooper stood hand resting on the old wooden fence that lined his property, eyes steady and unflinching. Sneered one of the bikers, a massive figure with tattoos snaking up his arms like vines. The gang thought they had power over him, judging him by his outward appearance, seeing only the dust of the earth clinging to him. "I'm just farming my land," Cooper replied, voice low but firm. The gang exchanged glances, a predatory gleam sparking in their eyes. They thrived on intimidation and chaos. "We're just passing through, but maybe we could use a little entertainment." Another one chimed in, stepping closer, smirking as if he were circling prey. In that moment, the tension thickened. Cooper's mind raced back to a time when he wore a different uniform, moved under the weight of armor rather than the weight of dirt-stained jeans. He recalled the drills, the strategy, the way he and his brothers in arms moved as one, turning fear into resolve and resolve into action. "You've got two choices," the tattooed biker continued, cracking his knuckles, stepping forward, chest puffed like a rooster ready to fight. The gang laughed at their own bravado, a sound that echoed in the stillness of the night. Cooper didn't flinch. His hands remained by his sides, breathing steady. Inside, adrenaline flooded through him, igniting memories of countless encounters. Ambushes in forests, strategies crafted in the dead of night, battles fought for freedom. They didn't know who he was, they didn't see the soldier behind the farmer's facade. With a quiet intensity, he took a small step forward, a silent shift that signaled an abrupt change in the atmosphere. He asked, a fire flickering in his gaze. The laughter quieted, replaced by a palpable tension. The biker's self-assured smile faltered for a heartbeat. Cooper's steady composure stoked the deep-rooted instincts in the gang. For a moment, uncertainty crept in. Were they really prepared for whatever was about to unfold? Before any of them could fully process the shift, Cooper sprung into action. The first biker lunged at him, fists swinging, but Cooper sidestepped effortlessly, a fluid movement perfectly aligned with the mission expertise he once wielded. He quickly grabbed a nearby pitchfork, its sharp prongs gleaming sinisterly in the glow of the fading sunlight. "Let's see how tough you really are," Cooper said, his voice a low growl, even as the rhythm of his heart pounded fiercely in his chest. The gang, now startled and unsure, stood frozen for a brief moment. The pitchfork was more than just an implement of farming. It became an extension of Cooper's will, a weapon that spoke to his history of discipline and strategy. He thrust it forward, catching the nearest biker off guard, the prongs scraping dangerously close to his leather jacket. The gang swarmed around him, but Cooper flowed through them like water, using the space he had, leveraging his training. He'd faced a dozen threats, dodged bullets, and fought against overwhelming odds before. This was just another version, a resurrected battle on his home turf. One biker reached for him from behind, but Cooper pivoted, elbowing him sharply in the gut, sending him sprawling. He hadn't just trained his mind on tactics, he mastered the art of combat under pressure. The hesitation from the gang was intoxicating. They were no longer hunters but frightened prey in the face of unexpected ferocity. He shouted, voice carrying authority that made even his own heart race with power. He flipped the pitchfork conveniently in his hands, almost with a chilling elegance. The gang wasn't laughing anymore. The cocky bravado evaporated, leaving them uneasy in the daylight shadows. Cooper was relentless, moving like a dance across the fields that had sheltered him in their embrace. Each swing, every calculated strike, was rife with emotion, anger for the years he spent hiding, frustration at the thought of what they could do to his land and family if he faltered. As the fight progressed, the realization hit them harder than any blow. This wasn't just a farmer defending his territory. This was a seasoned warrior, a protector of what mattered most. An aura surrounded Cooper, a strength that radiated and mesmerized. The more they attacked, the more fierce he became. Every punch faced met with a counterattack that sent shockwaves through the gang. The remaining gang members began to hesitate, anxious glances swapped between them, a flock of birds suddenly restless amongst the trees. The once overwhelming force felt too fragile, their bravado now nothing but a mask slipping away, revealing fear. One biker yelled, panic rising in his voice. They had thought it would be easy, but now they were caught in a whirlwind. Cooper, standing tall, was an immovable force, fueled by the deep roots of the land. They scrambled to retreat, hearts racing, adrenaline fueling their escape as Cooper's pitchfork glinted in the last rays of sunlight. When the dust finally settled, it left behind silence, heavy and persistent like a lead weight. Cooper stood alone, muscles taut with adrenaline and disbelief at the sharp turn of events. The sound of revving engines faded into the distance, a haunting reminder of how quickly a situation could flip. Underneath that farmer's exterior was a man who carried scars and stories, ready to protect what was rightfully his. He had surprised them with seasoned skill and unrelenting resolve. As night settled in around him, the stars twinkled above, whispering secrets of bravery and resilience to anyone who dared to listen. In the aftermath of the chaos, Cooper dropped the pitchfork to the ground, a sort of symbolic surrender to the fight within him. He knew that night would forever mark a turning point. It was a lesson in identity, strength lurking deep beneath the surface that only surfaced when pushed to the brink. Cooper Hayes was no ordinary farmer. He was a guardian of his land, a soldier still fighting, but this time for family, for peace. As he surveyed the quiet fields, a fierce pride surged within him. A farmer, yes, but also a warrior. Perhaps it was time for the community to recognize that sometimes the most unassuming creatures hid the truest strength. And the gray wolves, they'd think twice before crossing his threshold ever again. As the night enveloped the land, a profound stillness spread, knowing that this was a man who wouldn't back down, not against any storm. The sun dipped below the horizon, sending shadows creeping across the quiet fields of rural America. Dust hung in the evening air, a gentle haze that blotted out the last remnants of light. It was here in this picturesque landscape that Cooper Hayes twalled. To the neighbors, he was just another hard-working farmer, someone who knew the land like the back of his calloused hands. But tonight, the calm would shatter, revealing a man forged by fire and war. Out of nowhere, the rumble of motorcycle engines sliced through the tranquil air, like thunder rolling in from a distant storm. It was a familiar sound, the unmistakable roar of the gray wolves, a gang notorious for their brutal tactics and relentless bullying. They thought they could ride through this small, quiet town without a second thought, without realizing the storm they were about to unleash. Cooper stood up from his work, leaning against a weathered wooden fence, sweat glistening on his brow. He watched as the gang rolled in, leather jackets glinting like armor in the fading light. They were men with bravado, swaggering toward him with a false sense of invincibility. Little did they know they had just arrived at the wrong farm. "Look what we got here," one of the bikers called out, a gruff smile splitting his face. Just a lonely farmer. Cooper's eyes narrowed as he recognized the threat disguised behind their insincere smiles. "It's private property." Laughter erupted among the gang, a sound as cold and sharp as broken glass. "What's a farmer gonna do, huh?" The leader, A hulking figure with tattoos sprawling across his skin like iron vines stepped closer. The tension in the air thickened, suffocating the space between them. This wasn't just idle chatter. It was a precursor to violence. Cooper felt his heart beat louder, echoing in his ears as memories training for battle surged to the forefront of his mind. He thought of drill sergeants' barking commands, of the camaraderie forged with men who trusted each other with their lives. The gang exchanged glances, their bravado flickering, testing whether this man in overalls was bold or just a fool. The lead biker stepped forward, fists balled tightly, a clear warning. Or what? That was it. Any notion that they were facing a mere farmer evaporated. Cooper straightened, his posture shifting from idle to imposing. The air crackled with an electric intensity. "You don't want to find out what I can do," he said, voice deepening, growing solid and unwavering. The gang, now uncertain, hesitated for a breath. They were expecting easy prey and found themselves confronted by a mountain of defiance. Cooper took a step closer, the dust swirling around his boots as he leveled his gaze at the leader. The words contained a challenge, a spark of something primal that ignited within him. The facade of the farmer cracked, revealing a man forged in battles far beyond this rural life. Suddenly, chaos erupted. The lead biker charged, throwing a haymaker that would have sent most men sprawling. But Cooper had spent years honing reflexes, instincts honed through grueling hours of training, the kind that didn't just teach you to fight but how to survive. He ducked under the wild swing, moving fluidly like water, then spun around. A swift kick landed on the thug's knee, sending him crashing to the ground. The sound of cracking bone echoed through the quiet fields, a sickening reminder of the brutality unleashed. The laughter of the gang evaporated, replaced by stunned silence. In that moment, an all-too-familiar rhythm settled over Cooper. He felt vulnerable, yet powerful, exposed, yet alive. He had not just cracked a knee, he had shattered their arrogance. As the other bikers processed what had just happened, Cooper turned to face them, muscles taut and eyes blazing. The second biker lunged in, ready to avenge his fallen comrade with a reckless swing of his chain. But Cooper was already one step ahead. He sidestepped, grabbing a nearby pitchfork. It was a tool of the trade, yet now it transformed into an extension of his will. With grace and precision, he whipped it around in a fluid arc, the prongs gleaming ominously against the twilight sky. The gang saw it coming, but their fear had their legs frozen in place. Cooper thrust the pitchfork at the second biker, the points catching beneath the man's jacket as he collided against the wooden fence. Fear flashed in his eyes, and the rest of the gang halted, ground to a standstill. They hadn't just stumbled upon a farmer, they had wronged a warrior. Cooper's voice roared, cutting through the night air, a booming challenge. He stood tall, covered in sweat and dirt, a stark contrast to the polished leathers of the gang that surrounded him. They began to back away, confusion written across their faces like a map of fetal dread. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. A farmer was meant to cower, to call for help, not retaliate with ferocity. The paradigm shifted, revealing the hidden depths of a man long underestimated. The leader picked himself off the ground, wincing, but the look on his face told a different story. Fear mingled with rage. He motioned for the others to circle around. "Don't just stand there." This time, they charged as a pack, desperate to reclaim their dominance. Cooper's heart thrummed with adrenaline, memories and training guiding his next moves. He met the swarm head-on, using the pitchfork not just as a weapon but as a shield. He parried the first swing, felt the rush of wind as fists flew by, and ducked just in time to evade a wild swing. Each movement was a dance, a choreography that had been embedded in him somewhere deep in his memory. He sidestepped another attack and reversed the pitchfork to catch a biker in the gut, sending him sprawling backward. But the numbers were overwhelming, and Cooper could feel the pressure mounting. A third fighter connected with a blow to his side, reeling him momentarily. A grimace flitted across his face, pain flaring in his ribs, but he would not falter. A flash of fear settled over the gang as they witnessed his resolve despite the odds against him. With the precision of a trained soldier, Cooper lashed out again, sweeping the pitchfork low, catching another biker by surprise. The man stumbled, falling to the ground, shocked and dazed. "Leave now and you might just get out of here in one piece," Cooper growled, breath labored but fierce. Finally, the fear of defeat sunk in, and the remaining bikers exchanged wide-eyed glances. The leader snarled, "This isn't over, farmer." But with a hurried motion, they turned tail and fled, leaving behind their wounded comrades in their desperate escape. The night fell heavy around Cooper as the gang disappeared into the darkness. He stood alone, panting, the adrenaline coursing through him like fire, heart thumping against his chest. He looked around, the quiet returning to the sprawling fields, the only sound being the rustle of the wind through the corn. He dropped the pitchfork, feeling the weight of not just the tool, but the immense battle they had waged. It was more than a fight. It was a reclaiming of his identity, a reminder that within him lay the spirit of a soldier who wouldn't just bow to intimidation. Cooper knew this wasn't just about farming or defending a small plot of land. It was about standing up against those who sought to instill fear, who underestimated him by the clothes he wore and the work he did. He was a protector, a guardian of his own little corner of the world. As the stars twinkled above him, Cooper straightened his back and took a deep breath. The echo of power still hummed in his veins, and for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. The conflict had ignited something within him, a relentless spirit that refused to be subdued. Tomorrow would come and the sun would rise again over the fields. The world might see him as just a farmer, but he knew better. He was a soldier, ready to face whatever storms lay ahead, unafraid of the shadows. Sometimes, the most unassuming protectors held the fiercest strength, waiting patiently for the moment to reveal their true selves. And tonight, Cooper Hayes had shown them just what he was made of. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the golden fields of Clover Valley. Dust swirled gently in the breeze as Cooper Hayes wiped the sweat from his brow, his hands roughened by years of labor. To everyone in town, he was just a farmer, someone who worked the land and kept to himself. But beneath that humble exterior lay a past that few would ever understand. Suddenly, the calm of the evening shattered like glass. The roar of motorcycle engines pierced the serenity, echoing through the valley like thunder. It was the Gray Wolves, a ruthless gang known for their brazen intimidation. They were trouble. It wasn't the first time they had rolled through, but tonight felt different. A sense of foreboding hung in the air. Something about their approach felt like a predator sizing up its prey. Cooper squinted into the distance as dark figures emerged, silhouetted against the twilight. 5 bikers roared onto his property, skidding to a halt in a cloud of dust. They dismounted, a swagger in their steps, leather jackets gleaming under the fading sun. They thought they could just waltz into his life and take whatever they wanted. Called out the leader, a burly man with a scar running down his cheek. He looked Cooper up and down, a smirk creeping across his face. "Mind if we take a look around?" Cooper's heart raced for a moment, but he schooled his expression into calm. "You're trespassing." "You should leave," he said, his voice steady, betraying no fear. The gang erupted in laughter, dismissive and mocking. "What's a farmer gonna do, huh?" sneered another biker as he feigned a throwing motion. In that moment, a flicker of anger ignited inside Cooper. He wasn't just a farmer, he was a veteran, a man who had faced real dangers and fought in battles that shaped him. The strict discipline from his army days surged within him, reminding him of how to stand tall and fight back when the situation demanded it. "Leave now," Cooper said again, this time with an edge that caught their attention. The laughter died down as the gang exchanged glances, unsure. They were used to easy prey, not a man who stood his ground. "Or what?" the leader taunted, stepping forward. He completely underestimated Cooper's resolve. With a deep breath, Cooper took a step forward, allowing the tension to build. He asked, his voice low and powerful. The gang shifted, uncertainty creeping into their chests as they felt something stirring in Cooper's resolve. Before they could mock him further, the leader lunged, fists swinging like a freight train. Cooper's instincts kicked in as he ducked beneath the blow, moving fluidly as if he were dodging incoming fire during a mission. A nearby pitchfork gleamed, and without thinking, Cooper grabbed it with a swift motion. He turned and thrust it forward just as the closest biker lunged for him again. The prongs caught the man hard in the shoulder, sending him stumbling back, pain etched across his face. The momentary shock spread through the gang, and for the first time they hesitated. They hadn't expected this kind of resistance. With a swift motion, Cooper spun the pitchfork in his hands, now an extension of his focused will. "You should have left when you had the chance," he declared, his voice booming with authority. The gang members stared wide-eyed, grounding their beastly bravado beneath the weight of Cooper's determination. Before they could react, a second biker charged forward, swinging a chain. But Cooper was quicker, sidestepping the attack and countering with a powerful jab from the pitchfork. The metal connected with the biker's leg, sending him collapsing to the ground in a howl of pain. The air crackled with tension as adrenaline coursed through Cooper's veins. He was no longer just a farmer but transformed into a warrior, driven by the need to protect his home. Cooper shouted, his breath heavy but his resolve stronger than ever. The gang began to falter, the bravado that had once fueled them evaporating into fear. In the face of unpredictability, their instinct for self-preservation kicked in. As the remaining bikers circled him, Cooper could hear their heavy breaths, the whispers of doubt passing between them. They had misjudged him, and now they were trapped in a nightmare of their own making. The ground beneath them seemed to close in, each step forward growing more uncertain. Cooper pressed on, using his surroundings to his advantage. He swung the pitchfork low, knocking another biker off balance and onto the dusty ground. The thug landed hard, gasping for a moment before scrambling to his feet in a panic. Laughter erupted from Cooper. It was a response born not from malice, but from the joy of reclaiming control over a threatening situation. The leader, still on his feet, caught a glimpse of his retreating companions and felt rage boil within him. With a guttural roar, he charged again, desperate to restore his waning authority. But Cooper had been waiting for this moment. He dropped low, pivoting around as the leader miscalculated his attack. Cooper's legs swept out, catching the leader's feet and sending him sprawling to the ground. As he fell, Cooper stood over him. "It's time for you to leave," he hissed, shock and fear mingling on the man's face. In that moment, the power dynamic shifted completely. The leader scrambled to get back up, but at that very moment the remaining bikers decided enough was enough. They turned tail, sprinting away on their motorcycles, shouting in fear as they kicked up dust behind them. The remaining sound was the fading roar of engines echoing into the night. Breathless, Cooper let the pitchfork drop to the ground, a mix of adrenaline and relief flooding through him. He had faced the storm and emerged unscathed, revealing layers of strength he had kept hidden for too long. The quiet fields of Clover Valley returned, filled only with the whisper of the wind. As he surveyed the space around him, feelings of victory and self-affirmation ignited within him. He had reclaimed not just his land, but a part of himself that had been buried under the weight of everyday life. For years, he'd been a farmer bound by the earth, but tonight, he remembered the soldier he had once been, the protector who fought for values greater than himself. The town would eventually hear the tale, and they would no longer see just a humble farmer. They would see the man who stood up for his home, the soldier hiding behind the facade. It was an identity that would linger long after the night had passed. Cooper turned back toward his fields, now drenched in the silver glow of moonlight. The quiet night hummed with potential, a reminder that life was unpredictable, beautiful, and sometimes brutal. He brushed the dirt from his hands and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the pitchfork's power still coursing through his veins. Tomorrow would come and the battles would shift. Perhaps it would be as simple as plowing the fields or tending to the livestock. But in the back of his mind, he would carry the knowledge that he was more than just a farmer. He held the spirit of a soldier. No gang, no threat would ever take that from him again. As he walked through the tall grass, the shadows deepening around him, there was a quiet strength settling into his bones. In the distance, the stars twinkled brightly, and with each step, Cooper embraced the resolve that pulsed in his heart. No longer just a farmer, he was a guardian, ready to face whatever storms lay ahead, unafraid and unwavering. The lessons of the fields whispered new beginnings, and he was determined to rewrite his own story, one where bravery and resilience were at the forefront, backed by a spirit that would never fade. The sun hung heavy in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields of clover. Dust danced lazily in the air, settling around Cooper Hayes as he wiped sweat from his brow, his calloused hands roughened by years of hard work. He loved the solidity of the earth beneath his feet, the way life thrived in every inch of his property. To the townsfolk, Cooper was just a farmer, a simple man who kept to himself. But they had no idea that beneath his weathered exterior lay a resolve born of a different life, a life spent in service, a life steeped in military training. It was one of those quiet afternoons when the tranquility could easily be shattered. Cooper was in the middle of a routine check on his crops, oblivious to the trouble brewing in the distance. The familiar sound of motorcycle engines roared to life, breaking the stillness like a clap of thunder. They were coming, the Gray Wolves, a notorious gang known for their reckless behavior and disregard for anyone who dared to stand in their way. As the engines grew louder, Cooper's instincts tingled. He stood tall, squinting at the horizon as a line of motorcycles snaked into view, their riders cloaked in leather, tattoos marking them as a tribe of intruders. They approached with the confidence of a lion pride, ready to claim their territory. He felt an unsettling knot in his stomach. They rolled to a stop just outside his field, a cloud of dust swirling around them. The leader, a massive figure with a scar across his cheek, hopped off his bike, peering at Cooper as if sizing him up. His grin was sharp, predatory. "Just a lonely farmer. Get off my property," Cooper replied, his voice steady, not betraying the storm brewing inside him. The gang laughed, a sinister sound that echoed across the empty fields. "What's a farmer gonna do?" sneered one of the bikers, his bravado on full display. Cooper felt his pulse quicken. This was not a game. These men had no respect for boundaries or the hard work it took to cultivate land. He stood tall, rooted like an oak. "I told you to leave," he said, this time with more emphasis, a deep rumble rooted in years of discipline and commitment. The leader stepped closer, the laughter fading just enough for doubt to creep in. "Or what? You've got a pitchfork." The sarcasm dripped from his words. Inside, Cooper's mind raced back to nights spent on the battlefields, to the camaraderie formed with fellow soldiers, to the moments when silence surrounded them and courage set in. He was not their prey, not now, not ever. Cooper replied, allowing his voice to drop, thick with tension. That was it. The gang's laughter faded completely. You could hear the soft rustle of leaves in the wind, the subtle shift in the air. Cooper's stance shifted subtly, but it spoke volumes. He was no ordinary farmer. Behind the calloused hands and the worn clothes was a man who had fought for his country. In a split second, the lead biker charged toward him, fists swinging wildly. Without thinking, Cooper sidestepped, muscles coiling and ready. Years of training kicked in as his instincts took charge. He grabbed a nearby pitchfork, and with a flick of his wrist he brought it up, just as the gang member lunged. The prongs jabbed into the biker's shoulder, and with a shocked gasp he fell back, crumpling to the ground. A gasp swept through the remaining riders, disbelief etched on their faces. Cooper roared, the pitchfork now an extension of his will. The remaining bikers looked at one another, uncertainty gripping them like a vice. They had come expecting a timid figure, not a force of nature. The second biker surged forward, his attack fueled by anger. But Cooper was ready. He ducked low, spinning away and sweeping the pitchfork in a smooth arc that caught the biker off guard. The prongs caught him in the stomach, sending him sprawling backward in shock. The leader shouted, scrambling to regain control of the situation, but his bravado faltered. The tension thickened. Cooper was filled with adrenaline, the kind that comes from defending what you hold dear. He advanced, utilizing every movement, every tactic he had learned, bending low, shifting his weight, and using the pitchfork not just as a weapon but as a shield against incoming attacks. Another biker charged, swinging a heavy chain, but Cooper dodged with the fluidity of a trained soldier. The chain missed by inches, and in that instant Cooper thrust the pitchfork forward, driving it into the ground just in front of the attacker. The sharp sound of metal hitting earth echoed ominously, and the biker stumbled over it, losing his balance. The leader spat venomously, but there was a tremor in his voice. Cooper looked back at him, eyes sharp and unwavering. "I'm not just a farmer. I'm a soldier," he declared, letting the weight of those words hang in the air. It was a reminder of commitment, of duty, and of a past that defined him. Moments felt like hours as the bikers regrouped, fear tangible in their expressions. The leader's bravado began to crumble under the pressure. Cooper's quick responses, driven by years of combat training, surged once more, and with a mighty thrust he caught the leader off guard, sending him sprawling onto the ground, his leather jacket kicking up dust. He yelled, scrambling to his feet, but it was too late. The remaining gang members, suddenly aware of their peril, began to retreat. Run. And with that they fled, revving their motorcycles and tearing off into the distance, leaving behind the chaos and the dust. Cooper watched, breathing heavily, heart pounding with the thrill and relief of victory. The field that moments ago felt menacing now radiated tranquility once more. He dropped the pitchfork, the weight of it sinking into the soft soil, and he felt a surge of emotion course through him. He had fought for something greater than himself, something he thought long buried beneath the plow and the toil of farming. As the dust settled, memories of military drills came rushing back. The early morning runs, the camaraderie formed under the weight of service, and the sacrifices made were rooted deep within him. This wasn't just about rejection of the gang. This was about reclaiming his identity and making a stand. Cooper straightened up, taking a moment to breathe in the cool evening air. The once bustling ruckus turned into silent whispers of grass swaying gently in the wind. Each blade stood as a testament to persistence, not just of nature but of spirit. In the days that followed, word spread through Clover Creek. No longer just the quiet farmer, Cooper became a local legend, a man who stood firm against a gang when others would have hidden, a man willing to protect his home with everything he had. The townspeople approached him differently now. They no longer saw only the farmer tilling soil but the soldier ready to defend what he loved. Supplies were offered, hands shook with respect. Parents shared the story with their children, ensuring they understood the importance of courage, standing your ground and never taking threats lightly. Cooper found solace in his newfound role. Every morning, as he planted seeds and tilled the soil, he felt the weight of the farm transform into something more refreshing and fulfilling. The battle he fought wasn't just physical, it was a victory of the spirit. The knowledge that he carried within him the heart of a soldier, and the fight to protect his sanctuary was worth cherishing. Yet even as days turned to weeks, he knew the gray wolves could return. The taste of rage, the humiliation they'd faced, would not easily fade, but Cooper was ready. He farmed with a sense of purpose, shoulders back, head held high. He took pleasure in the ordinary tasks now, knowing that simple things carried a weight of significance. One evening, as the sun bathed Clover Creek in hues of orange and pink, he sat on his front porch, listening to the symphony of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves. His heart still thrummed with the adrenaline from their encounter, a pulse of readiness that would linger. Suddenly, he heard the rumble of engines again. The familiar sound sent a flicker of tension through him. He stood, his heart in his throat, straining to see the horizon. Were they coming back for revenge? As the engines roared closer, panic gripped him for a moment, but he pushed it aside. He wouldn't face them unprepared. Cooper grabbed the pitchfork again, feeling the familiar weight in his hands, grounding him. His gaze steadied as the dust cloud painted the landscape, and then silence fell. Just beyond the trees, shadows of motorcycles paused. The gang stopped short. A moment passed, filled with uncertainty. Finally, the lead biker emerged, fresh scars still visible from their last encounter. He scanned the landscape, eyes locking onto Cooper, who stood resolute. The leader called out, voice edged with hesitation. Cooper remained silent, the pitchfork held firmly at his side. They had come back not for a fight but with something else. He could sense the shift, a change in their outlook, conflicting with his own tightly coiled nerves. "Look," the leader continued, his bravado now tinged with caution. "What happened before? It was a mistake. We thought you were just a farmer." Cooper watched them closely, seeking the truth in their eyes. Underneath their veneer of toughness, there was something softer, a willingness to resolve. Perhaps the fear of what had transpired grew heavier than their pride. "Maybe you can help us," another biker added, glancing at the others for support. "We've been trying to change this life." For the first time in a long while, Cooper felt something shift within him. He wasn't just a protector. He was a man who understood the weight of choices, the burden of the past. He knew he carried the scars of his own battles, both inward and outside. He finally asked, lowering the pitchfork but not fully relinquishing its presence. The gang members exchanged glances, hesitating for a beat. "We want to find a way to start over. It's hard with this reputation," the leader explained, vulnerability creeping into his tone. Cooper considered the chaos they had brought to his life, the confusion, the pain, but he also understood the power of transformation. He nodded slowly, recognizing that while he had fought against them, change was possible. "All right," he said finally, determination in his tone. "But it won't be easy." The gang members nodded, relief flooding their expressions. They had come to reclaim their identities, and perhaps with Cooper's help they could rewrite their stories too. In that serene moment, amidst the towering cornfields, a new journey began. The gang thought he was just a farmer, but what they found was a soldier willing to teach, willing to help them find redemption, even when standing against the winds of doubt and uncertainty. And as the sun dipped below the horizon once more, casting a warm glow on Clover Creek, the promise of new beginnings hung in the air. Together they could grow not just crops, but lives transformed by resilience, courage, and the unwavering spirit that connects us all. The sun hung low over the sprawling fields of Maplewood, casting a warm glow across the rows of corn that swayed gently in the breeze. It was an ordinary day, or so it seemed. Cooper Hayes, a corn farmer, wiped the sweat from his brow as he surveyed his land, the pride of his heart and soul. To the small town and its residents, he was just another farmer, hands calloused and clothes worn. But hidden beneath that rugged exterior was a past few around here ever knew about, a past marked by discipline, sacrifice, and survival. As Cooper took in the sight of the corn bending gracefully in the wind, an unsettling rumble broke the peaceful ambience. The distant sound of motorcycle engines grew louder, and dread pooled in his stomach. It wasn't the first time the Gray Wolves, a notorious gang known for their ruthless intimidation tactics, rolled through the town. But something about their presence today felt different, threatening. Suddenly, 5 motorcycles roared into view, kicking up dust as they approached. Cooper's heart raced. He had heard the stories of the trouble they had caused in neighboring towns, the muggings, the bullying, the chaos. He tightened his grip on the hoe in his hand, muscles tensing in preparation for whatever was about to unfold. The gang rolled to a halt just outside his property, revving their engines as they dismounted, leather jackets gleaming in the afternoon sun. The leader, a hulking man with a scar across his cheek, strutted forward, scanning the land like a predator assessing its territory. He sneered, his eyes landing on Cooper. "Just a simple farmer." "Get off my property," Cooper replied firmly, standing his ground. Laughter erupted from the gang, an eerie sound that hung in the air like a storm cloud. "What's a farmer gonna do?" One of the bikers stepped closer, taunting him, their confidence intoxicating. Cooper could feel anger bubbling beneath the surface, his pulse quickening. They thought they could just waltz in and take what they wanted, but they didn't understand the man standing before them. Beneath the denim and the dirt lay the heart of a soldier. The lessons learned on foreign shores, the training that had transformed him from a boy into a man of resilience and skill, they all surged to the forefront of his mind. "Leave now before it gets ugly," Cooper said, his voice steady but low, threateningly calm. For a moment uncertainty flickered across the gang's faces. They'd expected easy prey, not a man who had the guts to stand up to them. The leader took a step back, lingering on the edge of doubt. The challenge hung in the air, filling the space between them with unshakable tension. Suddenly the leader lunged, swinging a fist aimed directly at Cooper's face. But he was ready. He sidestepped smoothly, moving like water to avoid the punch with a fluidity born from countless drills. His hand seized the old hoe, turning it into an unexpected weapon. The gang leader spat, disbelief etched on his face. "I'm no one you want to mess with," Cooper replied as he gripped the hoe firmly in both hands. The panic in the gang was palpable now. They had come for a fight, expecting a timid farmer, but they were faced with a storm. With a sharp thrust, Cooper swung the hoe, catching the nearest biker off guard. The metal head of the tool connected with the man's midsection, sending him crashing to the ground in pain. In that instant, everything shifted. The gang's bravado crumbled like dry leaves. Shock and fear rippled through them. Shouted one of the bikers, the urgency in his voice unmasking their growing panic. Cooper sprang into action, spinning the hoe with a grace that astonished even himself. He had spent countless hours training for combat, pouring himself into the discipline of military life. And now, those skills manifested in fluid movements that turned him into a formidable opponent. A second biker charged in, swinging a heavy chain, but Cooper was fast. He evaded the blow, ducking low and striking back, the hoe sweeping across like a scythe. With one swift motion, he knocked the chain from the gang member's grasp, the weapon clattering harmlessly to the ground. He taunted, adrenaline coursing through him, igniting a spark of confidence he hadn't felt in years. The gang hesitated, gauging their chances. Victory, once a certainty in their minds, now seemed elusive. Cooper stood ready, not just to protect his land but to reclaim a part of himself he thought had faded long ago. One of the bikers yelled, scrambling to regain some semblance of dignity as they turned to flee. In that moment of chaos, Cooper stepped forward, determined to end the threat once and for all. But as he advanced, the leader grasped for control. "We're not done yet, farmer." He started, but Cooper swung the hoe again, catching the man's feet out from under him. With a thud, the leader hit the ground, his bravado shattered, replaced with fear. "Enough games," Cooper growled, bringing the hoe down beside him with a thud. The remaining gang members needed no further encouragement. They hopped onto their motorcycles, the sound of engines roaring as they peeled away, kicking up dust behind them. Silence followed, broken only by the gentle rustle of leaves in the trees and the distant chirping of crickets. Cooper stood alone amidst the aftermath, breathless and exhilarated. He dropped to one knee, the hoe resting beside him, heart pounding. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to feel the rush of victory. He wasn't just a farmer pushing dirt. He was a guardian, a protector willing to fight for what was his. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting a warm, golden hue over the fields, and Cooper slowly stood, taking a deep breath to calm his racing heart. He glanced around at the quiet land that was his life, feeling a mixture of pride and caution. This wasn't over. He knew the gray wolves would not easily forget their defeat. Days turned into weeks, and the story of Cooper Hayes spread like wildfire through Maplewood. The townspeople gossiped about the fearless farmer who stood his ground when the gang came knocking. Parents told their children the tale, teaching them the importance of courage and resilience. But with the remaining buzz came a sense of anxiety too. Would the gang return, seeking revenge? Each day, Cooper went about his work tilling the soil, planting seeds, tending to his crops, but in the back of his mind a seed of worry sprouted. One evening, as he sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the fields, he heard the unmistakable rumble of motorcycle engines again. A knot formed in his stomach, and he gripped the arm of his chair, heart racing. It had only been a few weeks, but he was ready. This time he didn't wait. Cooper reached for the hoe propped against the wall, feeling its reassuring weight in his hands. He squared his shoulders, standing at the edge of his property, ready to face whatever came his way. As the dust cloud approached, he saw the familiar silhouettes of the gray wolves rolling into view. His heart pounded in his chest, but he held firm, refusing to let fear dictate his actions. The gang rolled to a stop, and this time the leader stepped forward, a different look on his face. The bravado was gone, replaced by something that resembled uncertainty. "Hey," the leader called out, his voice strangely subdued. Cooper narrowed his eyes, suspicion flaring. "Talk after what happened last time." "We've been thinking," the leader responded, glancing at his gang members who shifted uneasily at his side. "Things got out of hand." Cooper studied the gang, searching for signs of deceit. "Maybe," the leader admitted, his voice low. "But we're tired of this life, all the chaos, we want out." His words hung in the air, an unexpected twist in the story. Cooper felt a rush of conflicting emotions. He had every reason to reject their plea to send them running again. But a part of him remembered the empathy born from his time in the service, the shared struggles, the battles fought together. Cooper asked, skepticism echoed in his tone. "We want to learn." the leader insisted, courage building in his voice. If we could farm, maybe we could find a way to start over. The sincerity in their eyes caught Cooper off guard, and he felt a shift in his own heart. Maybe he was more than just a protector. Maybe he could offer a second chance not just for them but for himself. "Fine," he said, voice firm. "But it won't be easy. You're going to earn your place here, and it starts now." The gang members nodded, relief washing over their faces, but Cooper could see the doubt lurking beneath their tough exteriors. They were men accustomed to a life of violence, and now they stood at the precipice of change, unsure of what lay ahead. As he led them through the fields, sweat dripping from their brows, a sense of purpose filled the air. Day after day, they toiled under the sun, learning how to plant, to nurture, to cultivate the land that had once been a battlefield for Cooper. The laughter soon replaced the grunting and groaning as camaraderie was formed, bound by shared hardships and hard-won victories. Weeks turned into months, and the gray wolves transformed right before Cooper's eyes. They learned the patience needed to grow crops, the resilience it took to fight against nature, and the value of community. And through it all, Cooper shared not just the knowledge of farming, but the lessons of life woven into every moment of struggle and triumph. One evening, as they gathered on the porch, leaning on the railing and sipping cold lemonade, the gang leader looked at Cooper with an expression of gratitude. "You gave us a chance," he said softly. "I never thought I'd be sitting here." Cooper nodded, allowing a smile to break through. "We all deserve a second chance," he replied. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, it marked the beginning of a new journey. The gray wolves had shed their old skin, transformed into something entirely new, and for Cooper, the man who once thought he was just a farmer, it became a revelation that transcended identity. In the quiet moments, he often reflected on that unexpected encounter. They had thought he was just a farmer, but what he had revealed was a soldier willing to stand firm for what he believed in, ready to protect, teach, and offer redemption when it was most needed. And through it all, Cooper Hayes became not just a protector of the land but a beacon of resilience, proving that no matter where you come from or what battles you've faced, everyone has the potential to rise, to grow, and to create a future filled with hope and new beginnings. Together, they had cultivated not just fields of corn, but a community strengthened by the bonds of shared experience and the undeniable power of change. The sky was painted in deep orange hues as the sun began to sink beneath the horizon in the small town of Maplewood. Dust swirled gently in the evening breeze, and the soft sounds of nature filled the air. Cooper Hayes stood in the midst of his fields, the warm sun on his back, silhouetting his tall frame against the horizon. To the townsfolk, he was just a farmer, a man who loved his land and worked tirelessly, hands calloused and face lined by the sun. But within that sturdy exterior lay a history few knew about, a past spent in the heat of battle, forging a warrior where once stood a boy. On this evening, as he wiped the sweat from his brow, a distant sound broke through the tranquility, the unmistakable roar of motorcycle engines. Cooper's stomach twisted. The Gray Wolves, a notorious gang known for making life miserable in neighboring towns, were approaching. They had been a persistent thorn in the side of every hard-working person with a bloodhound's nose for trouble. As the rhythmic thumping grew louder, he dropped the pitchfork he was holding and stood at the edge of his property, eyeing the dust storm kicking up in their wake. 5 rugged bikers rode in, leather-clad and tattooed, their bikes screaming dominance over the land. The leader, a hulking figure with a face marked by scars and a nasty grin, led the charge. "Look at this little piece of land. Just a farmer," he taunted, dismounting his bike with a swagger that radiated cockiness. Cooper straightened his back, fury bubbling beneath the surface. "Get off my property," he demanded, voice low, eyes narrowing. The gang erupted into raucous laughter, their amusement cutting through the quiet of the evening. "What's a farmer gonna do?" One of them mocked, approaching slowly, fists cocked. They underestimated him, a mistake all too common. Cooper's heart raced not with fear but with the urgency to protect everything he held dear. He'd fought once, far away from fields and family. Now he was prepared to confront a new threat. "Leave now before you regret it," Cooper said, his voice steady, a quiet storm brewing beneath the calm facade. His military training surged through him, the discipline louder than the laughter echoing around him. The leader stepped forward, towering over him. "Or what? You'll take us on." He pointed dismissively at the pitchfork lying in the dirt. Cooper summoned every drop of certainty buried in his soul. "Try me," he replied, eyes locked on the gang leader, a fire igniting within him. In a split second, the gang lunged. The leader swung a fist aimed squarely at Cooper's face, but experience surged forth. He sidestepped with a practiced grace, the years of military drills asserting their strength. The hoe flew from the ground into his grip, and Cooper moved like a flash. With fluidity, he swung the pitchfork towards the closest biker, catching him in the gut just as he charged. The air erupted with a sickening thud as the biker stumbled backward, clutching his midsection, gasping for breath. Panic rippled through the gang as they froze, momentarily stunned. The leader barked, shock replacing mockery. "I'm not just a farmer," Cooper growled, thrusting the pitchfork menacingly. "I'm a soldier." Fresh fear coursed through the gang, and they exchanged uncertain glances. In that heartbeat of hesitation, Cooper lunged forward, adrenaline fueling each decisive move. The second biker charged at him, but Cooper was a step ahead, sidestepping and countering like a coiled spring. He jabbed the pitchfork forward, catching the thug with a sharp thrust, sending him crashing beside his fallen friend. The laughter among the gang melted into a tense silence, the thrill of battle painting reality in stark, brutal clarity. Seeing his comrades on the ground, the leader finally grasped the enormity of their mistake. This was no harmless farmer. Cooper was a force of nature. The leader shouted, desperation creeping in. But as they charged, Cooper was already in motion. Turning the pitchfork with an elegance born of combat training, he met the closest biker's attack head-on. The metal clashed against leather, sending a ripple of chaos through the gang. They stumbled, bewildered at his resilience. Cooper shouted, unyielding. With each strike, he commanded the ground, moving with precision. The leader scrambled to regain control as Cooper dodged another swing. Years of combat strategy and brotherhood surged through him, guiding every thrust and parry. The remaining bikers hesitated, witnessing their leader falter under the barrage. Cooper pivoted, swinging the pitchfork low, catching one biker by surprise, sending him tumbling to the ground. As the echo of chaos settled, Cooper stood, breath heavy and resolute. "You should have left when you had the chance," he said, voice low and unwavering. The leader, now desperate and humiliated, clutched his ribs in pain, his previous bravado eradicated. "We're not done," he rasped, struggling to reclaim his dignity. With a snarl, Cooper aimed the pitchfork at him, now an extension of his will. "Get off my land," he demanded, eyes narrowing with the weight of years spent fighting for something more than himself. In the wake of defeat, the gang turned tail, scrambling back to their motorcycles, engines roaring as they fled into the distance, leaving their wounded behind. Silence replaced the cacophony, a stillness that resonated with the intensity of what had just unfolded. Cooper dropped the pitchfork to the dirt and took a moment to catch his breath. The weight of the battle hung in the air, but adrenaline surged, igniting something deep within. He hadn't just fought for his land, he'd fought for the very essence of who he was, a protector. The sun dipped low, painting the fields in golden hues. Cooper stood alone, adrenaline still coursing through his veins, the remnants of the fight settling like dust in the wind. He felt a flicker of triumph. The town would remember this day, the day when they learned he was more than just a farmer. As time passed, the story spread through Maplewood, turning him into a local legend. Parents told tales of the fearless farmer who took a stand against the notorious gray wolves, a man who surprised them with his hidden skills. The townsfolk looked at him with renewed respect, their admiration echoing in the quiet of the fields as they passed by. But the victory felt bittersweet. He knew the gang would not stay down forever. They were too desperate, too full of pride to let this go. Even with the trophies of his success, the nagging worry settled into the back of his mind. Would they come back? And if so, how prepared was he? One evening, as Cooper leaned back on his porch, dusk settling in like a warm blanket, he heard the unmistakable rumble of bikes again. His heart raced, the knot in his stomach tightening. He couldn't ignore the threat. The gray wolves would be back for vengeance. He gripped the pitchfork, the wood rough against his palms, bracing himself for what was to come. As he looked toward the horizon, the dust cloud revealed the silhouettes of the motorcycles once more, this time with vengeance in their eyes. As they approached, the gang leader rode in front and Cooper stood firm at the edge of his property, weapon ready. He shouted, trying to keep fear at bay. With a newfound hesitation, the leader spoke, his voice laden with bitterness. "You think you've won. You humiliated us in front of our own. We're not here for a rematch. We came to offer you a chance. You've got skills." Cooper's heart thudded loudly in his chest, an unexpected offer hanging in the air. He stared, incredulous. The leader's arrogance faltered for a moment. "Listen, we know we pushed too hard. We thought we could scare you off. But what if the tide turned?" Cooper felt the tension intensify, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. They saw him as a tool, a weapon. But beyond that, the memory of his brothers-in-arms surged to the forefront. He was not their pawn, he was a guardian, a soldier bound by duty, not for chaos but for justice. "No," he replied firmly, tension building with each word. "You think you can intimidate me into making a mistake. I'm no enemy of the town or its people." The gang leader's face twisted with anger, but beneath it doubt flickered. The conviction rang through his voice, a declaration of who he was and what he would defend. For a heartbeat, the world fell silent. The gang members shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to proceed. Perhaps they had miscalculated him once more. In that moment, Cooper saw a change in the leader's eyes, a flicker of doubt. Slowly, the weight of their choices began to surface. "Maybe we can find another way," he muttered, glancing back at his gang, uncertainty lacing his voice. "Maybe you can make a different choice," Cooper offered, tension still charging the air. As he spoke, a sense of possibility began to blossom. The gang members glanced at one another, hesitations evident. Perhaps, just perhaps, there could be room for change amid the chaos. One by one, they started to rev their engines, their parade of leather and steel retreating back to the shadows from whence they came. As they faded into the distance, Cooper felt a sense of closure settle upon him. They were leaving, but more importantly, they were reconsidering. Days turned into weeks, and though the gray wolves still lingered in the background, a new air filled Maplewood. The word had spread Cooper was not just a farmer, he was a soldier dedicated to protecting the community. He continued working his land, but now, a sense of purpose infused each step. Other residents approached him, offering support, asking for advice on their own ventures. They began coming together, uniting against the remnants of the old chaos. As the sun rose each day over the fields, so did a newfound strength within the community. They were no longer fearful, they were united. Cooper became a leader among them, sharing his lessons of endurance, resilience, and the importance of standing together. As he watched the crops grow and flourish, he knew deep down that change wasn't just possible, it was within their grasp. As the sun dipped down at the end of another day, he felt a sense of peace settle within him. He was no longer just a farmer, nor merely a soldier. He was a protector of the land and its people, a guardian willing to fight for what was right. No one would forget the day the gang thought they could intimidate him, but what remained was a story of transformation. A story where courage met compassion, and amidst it all, the roots of community took hold, solidifying a bond that would not easily break. In the fields of Maplewood, sunlight glinting off the dewdrops, a new chapter unfolded. And in that moment, Cooper knew that they all had a part to play in forging a brighter future, one defined by hope, strength, and an unbreakable spirit. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the fields of Clover Valley. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon light, and the unmistakable sound of soil being tilled softly hummed through the air. Cooper Hayes kneeled among the rows of corn, his hands dirt-smeared but steady, planting the seeds that would soon offer life and sustenance. To most, he was just a farmer, a simple man connected to the land. But today would reveal that there was far more to him than met the eye. As Cooper stood up, wiping his brow, a distant rumble of motorcycle engines began to cut through the tranquil hum of the evening. His heart sank. The Gray Wolves, a notorious gang, haunted this area like a storm brewing on the horizon. They thrived on intimidation and chaos, striking fear in the hearts of everyone who crossed their path. Panic surged through Cooper as he watched a line of motorcycles emerge from the dusty road, glimmering like a dark omen. 5 riders roared onto his property, their leather jackets glinting in the fading sunlight. The leader, a hulking man with an unmistakable sneer, revved his engine one last time before dismounting, swaggering toward Cooper like a lion sizing up its prey. "Look what we have here," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Just a lonely farmer." Cooper's resolve tightened, heart pounding with a mix of fear and anger. "Get off my land," he replied, voice steady but laced with an authority that betrayed the fire within. Laughter erupted from the gang, echoing off the fields in a way that made Cooper's skin crawl. "What's a farmer gonna do?" Another one shouted, amusement in his tone. But deep in Cooper's chest, memories of combat surged, memories of training drills, nights spent in harsh conditions, and battles fueling a fierce need to protect what was his. "Leave now or there will be consequences," he warned, words heavy with unyielding determination. The leader shook his head, a mocking smile still plastered across his face. "Consequences? What, you have a pitchfork you think will scare us?" With a quick glance around, Cooper knew he couldn't back down. He wasn't just defending crops or property, he was defending the very essence of who he was. In an instant, the gang lunged at him, hands swinging and shouting, filled with bravado and the overconfidence that had always kept them untouchable. Instinct kicked in as Cooper sidestepped the first wildly thrown punch, years of military training guiding his movements. He seized a pitchfork that lay on the ground. With one swift motion, he thrust it forward with precision, catching the nearest thug in the chest. The metal prongs pierced through his jacket, and the man gasped, eyes wide with shock and disbelief as he fell back, grappling with pain. The leader gaped, his arrogance shattering like glass. "I'm not just a farmer," Cooper growled, eyes blazing with defiance. Fear rippled through the gang as they exchanged startled glances, uncertainty flickering on their faces. This wasn't the feeble opponent they had anticipated. Cooper took a step forward, holding the pitchfork like a weapon forged in righteous fury. He shouted, the challenge echoing across the field. As the second biker charged him, panic danced in the man's eyes. Cooper dodged to one side, spinning the pitchfork around, landing a sharp jab into the biker's gut. Time slowed and accelerated simultaneously as adrenaline poured through his veins, awakening a primal instinct for combat. Each move felt practiced yet electric, and as another gangster lunged, Cooper blocked the attack with a sharp thrust, using the pitchfork not just to protect himself but to create space. The gang members watched as their bravado crumbled, and Cooper's confidence surged like a force of nature. The leader shouted, desperate to rally his gang. Several bikers charged, their instincts honed to fight or flee, but Cooper was faster. He twisted and swung, his actions becoming a blur of efficient strikes that sent men sprawling. The leader's bravado faded, replaced by terror as he watched his gang members tumble to the ground, each hit a reminder that they were outmatched. "Stop!" he finally screamed, voice cracking under the weight of panic. But Cooper advanced with unrelenting intensity, feeling the rush of power and clarity coursing through him. No longer encumbered by the doubts that plagued his thoughts, he had become a warrior fighting not just for the land, but for his very identity. The few remaining bikers began to retreat, hearts racing with the reality of their defeat. In those eerie moments of desperation, Cooper felt something shift. He was prepared to defend his home, but now he also saw their vulnerability. They were men caught in a life of anger and fear, much like a soldier facing his own battles. With one final swing, Cooper sent the leader sprawling to the dirt. He barked, standing over him, the pitchfork hovering just above the ground. "Leave now and don't come back." The gang scrambled to their feet, bruised and embarrassed, hastily mounting their motorcycles and speeding away into the distance with engines thundering in retreat. As the dust settled and silence reclaimed the evening air, Cooper stood still, breath heavy, heart racing. He had fought one and felt alive in ways he hadn't in years, but this was not the end. He knew the gray wolves would not take defeat lightly. They would return, learning and plotting, and the next confrontation might not be so easy. Days passed, and the story of Cooper Hayes began to ripple through Clover Valley. He was no longer just a farmer in a small town. He had become a legend. Mothers recounted the tale to their children, while fathers nodded with respect, recognizing a kindred spirit. But as the excitement in the townspeople grew, so did the rumors. What if the gang came back for revenge? Cooper plastered a brave smile on his face, but anxiety festered in the back of his mind. Each time he heard the distant rumble of motorcycles, his heart raced, fingers curling around the pitchfork as he prepared for another fight. One crisp morning, as leaves crunched underfoot and the sky turned a brilliant shade of blue, Cooper stood by his fence, surveying the fields. An unsettling feeling settled over him, prickling the hairs on the back of his neck. Something felt off. He squinted toward the horizon. There they were again, the motorcycle gang returning, more numerous this time, engines roaring like a pack of wolves descending upon him. But this time they weren't coming to fight. They were riding in formation, their expressions serious, hardened. Cooper shouted, readying his pitchfork once more. The leader, now nursing bruises from their last encounter, stepped forward. "We're not here for a fight," he said, voice strained, but there was something vulnerable about the way he spoke. Cooper repeated, disbelief coloring his tone. "We know we messed up, but we're trying to change. We want to leave the gang life behind," the leader pleaded, sincerity in his eyes. Cooper's heart raced, ideas swirling in his mind. Was this a ruse or a genuine plea for help? He felt the weight of the pitchfork in his hands, not as a weapon now, but as a symbol of his choices: to protect, to teach, to stand firm. Then, in a moment of clarity, Cooper realized that maybe he could offer them a way out. "If you want change, prove it. You can work for me. You can learn to farm," he said, surprised even to himself. The leader was taken aback. "Yes," Cooper replied, locking eyes with the man. "But it won't be easy. You'll have to earn it. There is no place for violence here." The gang members exchanged glances, a mix of fear and hope flaring in their eyes. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but there was a glimmer of possibility. After a long pause, the leader nodded, something shifting in his gaze. With that, the motorcycle gang became eager apprentices, and as Cooper opened his home and his heart, he couldn't shake the feeling of a new beginning. Together, they tilled the fields and shared stories, transforming chaos into purpose with every seed they planted. The lines that defined them began to blur, and slowly they grew into a community. But as the sun began to rise and the fields flourished, an unwelcome shadow crept back into their lives. One evening, as Cooper and the gang shared a meal on the porch, laughter rang out, but the joyous atmosphere hung by a thread. The distant rumble of motorcycles became unmistakable, reverberating in his chest. Cooper turned just as the gang leader looked out, eyes wide. "It's them," he whispered. The gray wolves returned, but this time they weren't a laughing pack. They were a thunderstorm ready to unleash, engines roaring like guns aimed for battle. Cooper's heart raced, and the former gang members braced themselves, but fear clawed at the edges of their bravery. "Stay behind me," Cooper instructed, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him as he straightened, pitchfork in hand, facing the approaching storm. As the first gang member stepped forward, intent on a confrontation, Cooper prepared to defend everything he'd built, everything that meant the most. This time, the stakes were higher than just himself. It was about the fragile balance of a new life and the truth of redemption. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, and as tension hung palpably in the air, the world felt suspended, waiting to see if they could rise above the chaos or whether they would fall back into darkness. The sound of approaching engines roared like a tide, and Cooper stood firm, ready for the battle that threatened to descend upon him once more. This time he wouldn't fight alone.